peace negotiations? Can you name some?
NATO is not a party to peace negotiations. It's between Russia and Ukraine. And of course, it's facilitated by the US, and we welcome President Trump's efforts to achieve this peace. So
do you trust the US in this negotiation? Do you
once
trust
again,
the US?
Yes, I trust the US.
There were rumors that Woodcock might stop by in Brussels today.
I cannot comment on rumors. I'm sorry.
Should you have a greater role, though? These talks seem to be between...
comment on corruption cases in Ukraine?
That shows that Ukraine does have independent anti-corruption agencies, that it's working, and President Zelensky has made a very strong, decisive move to distance himself from all types of rumors. So we welcome this. Unlike in some other countries, it's working. It's working. It's a democracy with strong institutions. I thank you.
Good morning. Europe's destiny is on the line. We all want this war to end, and we welcome peace efforts. But it's imperative that the outcome is a just and lasting peace for Ukraine. This is about the future of Ukraine, but it's also about the future of Europe. We will not accept any new Yaltas. We need to remember the broader picture of European security architecture also after this war, because every war ends, but after every war there is a post-war era that tends to last much longer than the war, and that will be shaped not only after but also in the final stages of this war. That's why Ukraine needs to stay strong, and we, the allies in the largest and most successful military alliance in the history, needs to stay firm, and we need to stay committed, and we need to stay united behind the efforts to ensure that the ensuing peace will be lasting and fair, just for the Ukrainians. And for that reason, Norway today will announce an additional $500 million for Pearl programs, distributed in two packages, one together with Germany and Poland and one together with Germany and the Netherlands, because this is really a moment to ramp up support for Ukraine. They need to be able to negotiate from a position of strength. And it's also important that we already now remember that when this war eventually ends, Ukraine needs to be capable and able to defend itself against any return of hostilities. And this is a shared commitment, and this will be the key purpose of today's conversations in the NAC meeting, but of course also in the meeting with Ukraine in the NATO-Ukraine Council. I would also add that we appreciate that there is now a good development in NATO on discussions around Arctic security. All the 7 Arctic states in NATO are working closely on developing better concepts and better practices for defending the high north. And I remind you that 7 out of 8 Arctic nations are in NATO. The 8th is, of course, Russia. So this is part of the broader game. We also all strive to live up to the commitments we came out of the Hague meeting with, and I think this will also be an essential part of our conversation today at the NAC. And Norway, with so many others, will underline that these commitments are for real. They are serious, and they are also related to the need to be very clear of what is the defining challenge and defining threat for NATO, which is the developments in Russia, which will still be there when the war in Ukraine hopefully is over one day in a just and fair manner. Thank you for the attention.
Eventually back the release of the frozen Russian assets?
So this is a conversation that is ongoing in the European Union. We follow that closely, but we will see what the EU concludes with, and then we will take it from there. We have no other comments at this time.
Yesterday, President Putin was threatening Europe with war again. What is the reason behind these statements now, and what do you think of that?
Well, if you want Putin's reasoning, you need to ask him. NATO doesn't want war with anybody, but we have been prepared for 76 years. In the 76 years of NATO's existence, no other state has ever attacked a NATO country, and that is because we are always prepared to defend ourselves in the strongest military alliance in history. So I would advise against, but I can assure you that nobody here is seeking a war with Russia, but we are always prepared to defend our territory and our citizens with extremely capable force.
Yesterday, involvement of European side during these negotiations. How important is for you and for your country?
It's absolutely imperative. This is a war in Europe, as we keep saying. Nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine, but nothing about Europe without Europe, because this war happens in our continent. It's the first interstate war for 80 years on our own continent, and the outcome of this war will shape the new post-war era of Europe will be the post-Ukraine war era, and of course Europe has to be part in defining that. One last question.
But how sure are you that the US is taking European interests into account seriously when
Well, this is exactly why we are here in NATO with the United States, with our allies, to make sure that we stand committed, firm and united, because this is in our shared transatlantic interest. It's in the interest of us Europeans, and it's in the interest of our North American friends, Canada and the United States, to stay united in a world that is increasingly challenging. This is a continuous conversation, but I'm optimistic that this meeting will contribute in a good direction. Thank you. Yeah.
Good morning. We meet in difficult times, and how the war ends in Ukraine will have a huge impact on European and transatlantic security for a long time. Now, I appreciate all efforts to reach a just and lasting peace, but in the meantime, we need to step up on our own military investments, and Sweden is planning to reach 3.5% already in 2030, and step up on support to Ukraine. The Nordic countries provide 1/3 of all military support provided by NATO countries this year to Ukraine. Now, this says a lot about our 5 countries with only less than 30 million people, but it also says a lot about what other countries could do. And if we don't do this now, then it will cost us a lot more in the future. Thank you.
Putin yesterday reaction on peace talks, they made statement, some Putin, Ushakov, that they have good conversation, but even without go deeper in this proposal, peace proposal.
Well, until I see anything different, then I'm going to continue to draw the conclusion that Russia does not want peace, and that is why we need to stick to the 2-point plan, increase the support to Ukraine and increase the pressure on Russia. And we need to hit them where it hurts most, and that is the oil and gas revenues.
Be ready to go at war against Europe. What do you, if necessary, what do you make of such comments?
Well, I come to the conclusion that we need to step up on our own military investments. So this is an important meeting today to discuss the individual deliveries on the goals that we set up in The Hague this summer, because we know, and especially us who are living close to Russia, that they pose a real threat, and that is why we need to constrain them in every possible way.
Are you willing to offer a financial guarantee to Belgium for the release of the frozen Russian assets so they don't bear the responsibility all to themselves?
The frozen assets is a potential game changer. And of course, we need to make sure that Belgium feels secure when releasing these assets, because it is a great part of their GDP. And of course, Sweden is willing to contribute to that. Thank you very much.
Good morning. Finland supports all efforts towards constructive, lasting and a just peace for Ukraine. And also we are here to bolster the transatlantic alliance, which has never been stronger. We are living up to the commitments set forth in the summit of last summer in The Hague. And obviously a major discussion point today will also be the peace talks. Now, there can't be a lasting and sustainable peace if the evil persists. On the very contrary, we have to make sure that the good guys are able to build a sovereign country based on liberty, on freedom, on transparency, and full democracy, which the Ukrainian people deserve. And we are here to support them.
Does these negotiations even make sense because Russia refuses all of compromises right now?
So far we haven't seen any concessions from the side of the aggressor, which is Russia. And I think the best confidence-building measure would be to start with a full ceasefire. And if not with a full ceasefire, then with a ceasefire on energy infrastructure, which would make sure that there are no deliberate civilian casualties, which has been, unfortunately, the playbook of Russia so far.
Minister, there's no unanimity for NATO membership in NATO, here in NATO. So why should this option not be ruled out if there's no unanimity anyway?
For what?
For Ukraine membership in NATO. Yeah.
Well, I look forward to a future where Ukraine is a full member in NATO. It might not happen tomorrow. It would anyway not happen tomorrow, but someday it has to be possible, and I'm sure it's in the full interest of the entire alliance.
Yesterday, Putin was threatening
to go at war against Europe if necessary. What do you make of such comments?
Well, it's the rhetoric that Russia is making use of in order to intimidate us, and we shouldn't take such talks too seriously. We have very strong capabilities as NATO, as Europe, and we are ramping up by the day. And Russia, on the very contrary, is in a position where it's desperately looking for an off-ramp out of the war it should never have started, and which was obviously based on a totally misguided calculus on what was going to happen. The Ukrainians have been brave enough to resist the evil for 4 years now, and even longer if we start with the illegal annexation of Crimea. Ukraine has all the possibilities to really, have a future which is based on not only the freedom but also the full sovereignty which it deserves.
Considering these peace talks, Minister, Secretary Rubio is not even here today.
I'm so glad that Secretary Rubio is involved in these peace talks. I think his efforts together with the American team have been extremely constructive, and we have American presence here, and we are able to discuss as the alliance also with the deputy.
Considering the frozen Russian assets in Belgium, is Finland willing to offer a financial guarantee to Belgium so they don't bear the burden if this decision is reached?
It's very important that we find a solution to making use of the frozen assets for the victim of this war, and at the end of the day for the victory of humanity.
Seems you have been offered the possibility that Witkoff would stop by in Brussels on his way back from Moscow. Do you know anything about that, and would you welcome such a step?
I spoke with my colleague Andrei Zubia last night, and he was confident that in some shape or form we will be briefed also here in Europe, and he will himself be coming over, and I'm looking forward to those discussions as well. But apparently they haven't been able to reach massive consensus last night in Moscow.
Have you seen the statement of Russian officials after yesterday's negotiation, and what do you think about this statement?
Well, it looks like Russia is not willing to make any compromise, and they still are looking to achieve the full goals which they started to go after with this full-scale invasion in the first place, which was full subjugation of Ukraine. So therefore it is so important that any peace deal will recognize that not only needs the killing stop, and we would hope for the killing to stop today in the form of a ceasefire, but there also need to be terms which make Ukraine strong enough to, in the future, resist any, not only invasion on the military side, but also any political interference which is fully in the Russian playbook to, make sure that their neighboring countries do not become a showcase for personal liberties which is exactly what Putin wants to prevent in his own country. Thank you so very much.
Good morning. We have come here today on behalf of Romania with a very clear mandate to increase the security of our citizens, but also to contribute to an increased security of the entire allied territory. Romania is a key provider of deterrence and defense on the eastern flank. We have recently, again, just proved our core strategic role with the Dacian Fall 2025 exercises that involve more than 5,000 troops from Romania, France, United States and allied countries, and more than 1,200 military equipments. It has also been a good exercise to test the military mobility across the continent and find ways to improve it. That is also going to be a conversation for today. We're also in a moment where Bucharest has hosted the Future Technology perspective of NATO with the NATO Industry Forum that we hosted in Bucharest. And that is also a key message we have for today as well, which is we need to keep pace in terms of innovation and in terms of new technology. Romania initiated alongside other 10 allied partners a key conversation in preparation of today and an ongoing conversation on the role that NATO has in terms of preventing and countering hybrid threats, something that we see happening at an increased pace and where we see the role of NATO as being stronger in terms of how we connect with each other, how we share our lessons, and how we prepare to analyze, prevent, and combat such threats. I'm sorry. Our key objectives today concern air defense and especially ways to increase our capacity to make sure we protect our space from drone incursions. For Romania, a very important component is the maritime security, and we're going to have a meeting today, Romania, Turkey, and Bulgaria, to discuss about the Black Sea security. And of course, as I mentioned before, the military mobility is extremely important for us, and we're going to join the conversation with Italy and the Western Balkans on the Balkans corridor and ways to improve the military mobility from the Black Sea to the Adriatic and the other way around. Thank you. And absolutely the most important part, which is our key objective, to contribute and make sure we have a peace at the border. We are supporting Ukraine in this, its territorial sovereignty and integrity, because our key objective, especially as we are among the friendly neighbors, the one with the longest border to the war, directly interested in the security guarantees and in the peace negotiations. Something that is very important is that we need an accord of peace, not just for the present, but especially for it to be sustainable in the future. And our main objective is to be alongside the partner that wants peace, and that currently is definitely on the side of Ukraine. But this being said, the effort that has been done by European partners, especially by the United States more intensely in the last weeks and days, it is extremely important, and we're looking with hope at the next steps ahead.
About the result of yesterday's negotiation in Moscow, are you satisfied what you have heard from Russian side? Do you think they really want to go to peace?
Well, we're almost 4 years into a three-day war, so what we can say from this period of time is that when we look at Russia, we need to look at their actions rather than their words. But it is obviously very important that the discussion took place. It is obviously very important that the United States has taken on this key leadership role going forward. But in terms of Russia, we need to make sure we look at their actions. Unfortunately, in the last days, we have seen actually attacks against children, against civilians. So we need to see at what they do, not just what they say. I'm sorry, can you...
How should allies like yourselves combat the likes of the hybrid attacks we've seen from Russia?
Well, in our case, for example, what we want to make sure is here in the NATO format, and also we're having this conversation at the EU level, is to have a better coordination among us, to recognize hybrid threats as an actual risk into the Allied territory and treat it as such. And then it depends. If you look at for example, the air balloons that have entered our airspace here, you need better deterrence in terms of how you monitor that. But also, for example, at the EU level, we believe sanctions, and this is something that's going to happen for Belarus, for example, because of their hybrid incursions into the Allied space, then that we believe also it is a key mechanism. But the nature of hybrid is that it is complex and diverse. So here we think we need a better coordination among us as allies, NATO to step up its role in that, and also in terms of actual investments in what you need in comparison with other defense spending, for example. It's a very low investment versus the return on investment that you have with deterrence and defense.
How vital is it for your country to involve in the negotiations? I mean, Russia, Ukraine, and
yes,
Europe is dispensed. And the second question, how would you comment on corruption cases in Ukraine?
On the negotiation part, we are involved in the coalition of the willing format, but also tomorrow I'm going to fly from here to Vienna, where we're going to have a trilateral meeting with the ministers of foreign affairs of Ukraine and Moldova. We call it the Odessa Triangle. We have had these meetings in Cernăuți as well to discuss among the three ministers exactly how do we see for our region, for the border, but also the security of Moldova going forward. And that's an element we always address in negotiations, but we also always address in terms of security guarantees going forward. Something that's also very important, where Romania has an important role and we want to continue contributing, is the security at the Black Sea. This is absolutely essential, not just in terms of NATO, but also in terms of the capacity we have together to keep the Black Sea safe for the commercial routes, for example, something that we have seen as being essential even from the beginning of this war of aggression, in terms of allowing, for example, for the cereals to have their export path that was needed for the economic survival of Ukraine as well.
How important is it that Russian frozen assets are finally being used?
Okay, so not to shy away from the corruption question, it is obviously something that cannot continue to happen. We see Ukraine take the tough measures that are needed, and something that we need to be very clear about is that there is no place for corruption, especially that when we look at a lot of the investments, we look at the investment and financial resources that are gathered from other countries' citizens and contributions, but also especially that we have the Ukrainian citizens fighting a war every day, and obviously there in the Ukrainian society we don't see any tolerance towards corruption at all. But we see Ukraine and President Zelensky taking the necessary steps internally as well, but also to keep the external confidence that is needed in the negotiation process. Can you repeat the question, please?
Frozen assets, how important is it that they are finally being used, and that it might be announced today how the legal framework looks like?
It makes sense that we have the aggressor pay as well, and that we increase the pressure also on Russia with every instrument that we have. So it's not just about financing the future steps, that is something very important as well, but it's also about increasing the pressure. And here, obviously, when we speak about the frozen assets, we need to speak also about a shared responsibility among the countries that want to contribute in terms of guarantees. Thank you.
Morning, everyone. It's the first thing to underline today that Russia is and will remain direct military threat to NATO, and it will remain as this after the ceasefire or after the peace that will be achieved in Ukraine one day. And that is why we have to be serious and be prepared as NATO, as an alliance, for this, to meet this threat. Even today, we are, as the NATO, under attack with the different forms of the hybrid activities from Russia and its accomplice, Belarus. That is the GPS jamming and spoofing. These are meteorological balloons that are now interrupting our civil aviation and make the real danger to our critical infrastructure. We have to address it. We have to address it with the strong and resolved measures to increase our air defense and also the awareness of what is happening in a very neighborhood of ours. Our decisions that we made in the Hague summit have to be implemented fast and faster than we pledged, faster than 2035, and Lithuania in this leads by example. So this year we have the 4% of our GDP spending on defense. Next year we will have 5.4% of our GDP dedicated for the defense. And we do it with the very clear goal in our mind, to be prepared with our armed forces, to develop the division in our national land forces, and also to prepare the critical infrastructure, host nation support infrastructure that is needed for our allies. This is our approach. And I'm really here today hoping to hear the same from our allies, from the countries around the table, that they are doing also the same. Speed up with the defense spending. This is very much needed, because otherwise we will be tested with what we have committed, and we want to avoid this. We have to continue with our support to Ukraine. What changed during this half a year from the last foreign ministerial meeting till today, we see that Europe mobilized and collected itself and had provided more resources that are needed to Ukraine with the Pearl mechanism. We see that United States are engaged in the process. They put the diplomatic efforts to achieve the long-lasting peace. What hasn't changed during this half a year, that was the Russia's position. They're absolutely not interested in neither ceasefire nor peace agreement, and they continue to do what they're doing. So for us, this is the reason to prepare the finances for the next year. And in doing this, we have to understand the needs of Ukraine. That's more than 50 billion euros that they need. And we also have to understand that we have to share the burden. We cannot proceed like it is right now on the shoulders of Nordic Baltic countries, Germany, Poland, some of the others. We have to share it across the alliance. And that will be my message today to allies. We have to get serious with the planning, and we cannot leave Ukraine where they are right now. And, yeah, please.
Doesn't going negotiation talks even make sense just because Russia continued to refuse all of the compromises, all of the proposals? So what's next?
We have to do what we are doing right now. Prepare ourselves and provide support to Ukraine. And we have to plan for the multi-years to come, as Lithuania did. We committed for 10 years. 0.25% for 10 years of our GDP will be provided for security and defense needs of Ukraine. If all the European nations will do this, that will be enough for Ukraine's defense efforts. So this is the formula that we are suggesting and proposing. Yes, we see that the efforts of United States are really constant, but we have also to admit that Russia is not meeting them with any flexibility. And what they're trying to do is trying to convince the international community that it's okay to break the fundamental principles. And it's not okay with us. Territorial integrity, sovereignty, those are the very, very basic things that protects us all. If we will recognize the territorial gains of Russia, that would kill the international law immediately. And then it would mean that there will be more aggression and there will be even more threats to the neighborhood of Russia and actually elsewhere.
Yesterday, President Putin was threatening Europe with war again. What stands behind these threats now, and how Europe should react to this new rhetoric once again?
He is projecting his readiness to get involved into the larger conflict with NATO. And these are two things. One thing, of course, we have to divide by 2 and then by 10 when we listen to him. Because, you know, one reason that is, of course, propaganda and it's intimidation of us. On the other hand, we have to be also serious about the words. We heard his demands in 2021, what he wants from NATO, infrastructure to be moved out from the so-called new member states, and then also Americans with all the assets out from Europe. Now he's saying that he is getting ready to war if we want this. For us, this is a message to get our readiness in place. So it's not only capabilities, but it's also readiness, if it is needed to do it even today. So that would be very good, another reason to discuss where we are, what concerns NATO capability targets today in our discussion. I wouldn't fall into this trap.
How important is it that the US will consult with European allies in peace negotiations? And do you have the impression that this is being actually done enough?
Europeans has to be at the table when we are talking European security. That is absolutely principal thing. And we cannot discuss the future of the European security architecture without Europe. Of course, we know what Russia would love to see as the European security structure, but that would be against our basic security interests. We have to be at the table, because this is our say, and at the end of the day, we are putting a lot of money into it and a lot of political efforts. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. NATO is at the heart of UK's security, and that is why I'm here today as part of our partnership abroad that makes us stronger at home. And here alongside foreign ministers from across NATO to affirm our strong support for the people of Ukraine and for the process to secure a just and lasting peace for Ukraine, with security for Europe and security for NATO as well. We have seen in recent days President Trump and the US pursue a just and lasting peace for Ukraine and for the Ukrainian people, and for President Zelensky to pursue their willingness for a ceasefire and for a just and lasting peace for Ukraine. But instead, what we have seen is President Putin simply seek to escalate war, and we've seen over the weekend the continuing strikes, the heavy strikes that have led to power being switched off for hundreds of thousands of people. And that is why today I'm announcing the UK's additional £10 million to support energy infrastructure repairs in Ukraine, because whilst President Putin is seeking to switch the lights off and plunge Ukraine into darkness, we will continue to work to switch the lights back on. And we will continue to show our support for the Ukrainian people, for the sovereignty of Ukraine, and for a just and lasting peace, with the security of Europe and the security of NATO at its heart. Thank you.
From Kosovo, I would like to take one answer for you. I'm Ibn Hari Sufi from TV1. We have 2 years from the attack on Bainska, and at the same time 1 year from the Iber-Lepans. What is your answer for this? And what is your message to Vučić? Because the Milan Radicic is not arrested, he's still now free in the Belgrade.
So the talks that we will have today, the discussions we will have today, are all very clear that we've seen two presidents are seeking peace, President Trump and President Zelensky. But so far all we have seen from President Putin is an attempt to escalate war. And that is why President Putin should end the bluster and the bloodshed and be ready to come to the table and to support a just and lasting peace for Ukraine and for the security of Europe and the security of NATO. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Good morning, all of you. It's early hour. Looking forward today to host the foreign ministers of NATO. Of course, we'll be discussing the historic The Hague summit, and to make sure that we implement all the decisions when it comes to someone's phone is ringing. And so to discuss the implementation of that summit, particularly when it comes to defense spending, ramping up to 5% on a credible path. Defense industrial production, we have to do much more. We are doing better, but still a lot to be done. And of course, keeping Ukraine as strong as possible in the fight today, but also to be in the strongest possible position when peace talks really start to happen in a way where this could lead to a result. And then we will also have the NATO-Ukraine Council later today, the lunch, with Andriy Sybiha, the foreign minister, and Kaja Kallas, the EU High Representative there, discussing, again, Ukraine. How do we make sure that Ukraine stays as strong as possible? The peace talks are ongoing. That's good, but at the same time we have to make sure that whilst they take place, and we are not sure when they will end, that Ukraine is in the strongest possible position to keep the fight going, to fight back against the Russians, but also in the strongest possible position when peace talks really get to a point where they sit at the table. Having said that, I'm open to a few questions, and then of course we'll see each other later at a full presser after the foreign ministers' meeting. Who wants to start? One at a time. Yes.
Yesterday Putin was threatening Europe with war again. So what would be your message for him today after these threats?
I'm not going to react to everything Putin is saying. We have seen him in military clothes, dressed like a soldier at the front, but not at the front. It was quite far from the front the day before yesterday. So no, I'm not going to react to everything.
New pearl pledges by Norway, the Netherlands, Germany.
Yes, so that's really great news. So a lot of pledges have come in, and I hope I can make a few announcements later today. Pledges made today. And when you look at the overall numbers, as I said yesterday, we are now at 4 billion. So that means we are really on track for the 1 billion a month, August, September, October, November. And I'm cautiously optimistic that we will reach the 5 billion for the full year. And then for next year, we need for the full year, again, a lot of money, at least 1 billion, maybe even a little bit more than 1 billion a month. It might be around 50, maybe a little bit more for the whole year. When it comes to this crucial US gear, so this is offensive and defensive, including interceptors for the air defense systems, crucial to keep Ukrainian civilians and civilian infrastructure safe. So it is really good that this flow is there, that Europeans are stepping up, and Canada, by the way, also doing a lot here. So really, really glad that this is working.
Sir, let's talk about any of his team about how the talks went in Moscow last night.
Well, as you know, I'm really glad that the US president broke the deadlock with Putin, started this whole peace process. It was only the US, under the leadership of President Trump, who could do this. But I don't want to comment on every step. So last night was, of course, important. There will be more steps, but you will not hear me commenting on every in-between step. We closely coordinate with the Americans what's happening, but not commenting on every step.
What do you make of the rare absence of the US Secretary of State, and do you have the impression that the US are consulting enough with European allies?
Oh, they are absolutely consulting enough. The teams here at NATO and Marco Rubio's team are in constant contact. I myself in constant contact with the Secretary of State. Of course, he is working very hard when it comes to the peace process on Ukraine, but also when it comes to Sudan, Gaza and all the other issues the Americans are working on. So I find it totally acceptable that he is not here. Chris Lendau is here, the Deputy Secretary. I had dinner with him last night, and he will be really great at the table. So let's not look into more than anything there's there.
How would you comment on corruption?
Bit louder.
Corruption cases and scandals in Ukraine. Kaja Kallas this week said that trust is important, even important during war times, but nothing should tint the European way of Ukraine. So what is your position about it?
No, I mean, I commented before that, of course, when corruption takes place, that it is important, and these corruption cases emerge, that the Ukrainians deal with it. And they are dealing with it. I think the Ukrainian president is taking all the necessary steps to root out corruption.
Please, how to push Russia to compromise something during these peace negotiations? And does these peace negotiations even make sense because Russia doesn't want to compromise anything?
Again, the process is taking place. We had successful meetings in Geneva and in Miami between the American and Ukrainian teams. Last night there was the meeting in Moscow. Again, I'm not going to comment on every step on the way. It's important that the peace process is there. Hopefully it will lead to results. And if it takes too long or it is not leading to results, the best way to put pressure on the Russians is by doing two things. One is making sure that the Russians understand that the weapon flow into Ukraine will keep on going. That's exactly what's happening today, thanks to the US, thanks to the Europeans. US sending its crucial gear to Ukraine, paid for by Canada and European allies, but also Europe and Canada doing a lot bilaterally. And secondly, making sure that the economic sanctions bite, that they are effective. That's also exactly what is happening. The US and Europe working in conjunction to have the maximum impact through sanctions on the Russian economy. That's the best way to change Putin's calculus. And in the meantime, of course, we hope that this will end sooner than later, because as the President of the United States has said, the meat grinder has got to stop, and I agree fully with him. Final question then.
Talking about financing and supporting Ukraine, how important are the Russian frozen assets in context to keep this weapon flow you were talking about going?
Yeah, but what's important is that the weapon flow and all the other support keeps on flowing, including the Danish-Lithuanian initiative of investing in the defense industrial base in Ukraine, including the Czech ammunition initiative, including all the bilateral support going into Ukraine. I commend what the Irish have announced yesterday, so I think this is all important. Of course, Ireland not in NATO, but still supporting Ukraine. Of course, the way to fund it is a debate, and I'm not going into that because this is really up to the EU, and I know the European Union is working hard at solving that issue. So thank you so much, and we'll meet again after all the meetings. Thanks.
Bonjour, ça marche? Ça marche? Bonjour tout le monde. En tant que membre fondateur de l'OTAN, le Canada est ici dans un monde plus divisé que jamais. Donc, je voudrais d'être ici avec mes homologues pour discuter notre défense collective, aussi les menaces dans l'Arctique et le travail que nous devons faire ensemble pour l'Ukraine et le monde aussi. Today, I am pleased to be here in a world that is more divisive and filled with conflict than ever before. And we will continue to work together as NATO allies, as colleagues, as friends and partners on collective defense going forward. As we continue to see horrific images of Ukrainian families and children being killed on the battlefield and in cities and towns across Ukraine, Canada stands firmly, shoulder to shoulder with Ukraine in the short and the long term. That is why today I am here to make two announcements. First, I am pleased to announce that Canada, alongside several allies, will purchase a package of military capabilities under the Pearl program. This is the NATO vehicle for military support for Ukraine. Canada's contribution to the purchase of this Pearl package will be $200 million, bringing Canada's total contribution to $890 million over the past 6 months. Second, I am announcing that Canada is committing $35 million in security support through the NATO Comprehensive Assistance Package Fund. This brings Canada's contribution to the cap to a total of $180 million. And in particular, that funding is going to support the purchase of resources such as fuel, medical supplies, communications equipment, gear, services, and more. With that, my friends, those two major announcements for support for Ukraine as we go into the winter months, I would like to conclude by saying que le Canada est ici dans le court et le long terme pour l'Ukraine. Nous sommes là pour les règles internationales et aussi pour la démocratie, pas seulement pour l'Ukraine, mais pour le monde entier. Merci et je voudrais recevoir vos questions.
Are there other allies being left out of the negotiations the US is having? It seems like it's between US and Russia, US and Ukraine, but not the other allies. I mean, Marco Rubio's not even here today.
We are continuing to receive updates, and I expect to be speaking with Secretary Rubio as well. We know that the United States is represented here, and it is important, of course, for Ukraine to be part of the discussions as well. I believe that Andrei Sybiha will be briefed, and he's my counterpart, and I'm sure that President Zelensky will also be part of this. Nobody wants peace more than the Ukrainian people themselves, especially since they have been the victims of an unjustifiable and illegal war now for almost 4 years. We need to do whatever possible to support the peace efforts, to support a potential ceasefire, and then to be there for Ukraine in the reconstruction and the replenishment of infrastructure and support for the Ukrainian people.
Minister, what should be some of NATO's red lines when it comes to mentions of the alliance within a peace plan with Ukraine?
We know that the NATO alliance was mentioned in the 28-point peace plan. The key there is to ensure that conversations about NATO membership rest with NATO itself. And in particular, Canada has long supported the open accession process for NATO membership, and we continue to support Ukraine's path towards that end through the NATO process, of course. And so we very much welcome that conversation, but it is a conversation for NATO and NATO members to have within the NATO process. Merci beaucoup, mes amis.
Good morning. So it's a pleasure to be here at this meeting of foreign ministers, a meeting which is the first one after the historic NATO summit in The Hague. Of course, we will be discussing NATO's preparedness coming out of the summit, what our plans are looking towards the future. A very strong focus will be on our principled support for Ukraine. But what we also see is momentum and a window of opportunity for peace in Ukraine. The Trump administration, Secretary Marco Rubio, President Trump, his entire team have put a very strong commitment on finding peace. We see, I will reiterate once again, that there is a clear window of opportunity for finding such a peaceful solution. And of course, we will stand behind our support for this existing momentum. On the sidelines, we will also have a very important discussion on Corridor 8, which is a key political security corridor. It is a corridor for enhancing connectivity, but also for strategic military mobility. Myself and our Italian colleague, Antonio Tajani, will be co-hosting this event, where we hope that we will be able to discuss not just Corridor 8, but also the Western Balkans, where there is a very high level of malign influence coming from Russia, China, but also other stakeholders. So these are the key issues that we will be covering throughout the day. It will also be a pleasure to continue the discussion with our colleague from Ukraine, as well as High Representative Kaja Kallas, who will be joining us this afternoon. Thank you.
Good morning. It's good to be here. The first meeting of foreign ministers after the summit we held in The Hague. I'm honored now to be here as the Dutch foreign minister in this new capacity. And at a crucial point in time, of course, with the ongoing talks in Moscow, the need to ramp up our support to Ukraine, which we will do. We will announce an extra Pearl package of 250 million euros today, but also necessary to continue our journey towards a 5% defense spending. So good to be here.
He would be ready to go at war against Europe if necessary. What do you make of such comments?
Well, horrible comments, of course. Let's hope that doesn't materialize, but let's take this as a serious warning that increasing our defense spending is not something we do for show. It's necessary in the neighborhood that we are in here in Europe.
Minister, how you want to make sure that the US is taking Europe's interests into account?
Well, I think they do. And I think that what we've seen over the past 2 weeks is a testimony of that. We started out with a 28-point plan. And now, after consultations with Europeans, with Ukraine, this plan has altered. And that what has been put before Putin is a totally different plan, taking into account the European and Ukrainian interests.
Some of the hybrid attacks we've been seeing from Russia, do you think you should be taking preemptive action against these?
Well, what we should do is make sure that we are resilient against these kind of attacks. We will see more of them, I'm afraid. This is a sign of our times. This is the way Russia operates. So whether it's sabotaging train tracks, whether it's sending drones in, disinformation, we will see all kinds of these hybrid attacks. The best way to prevent these is to be immune to them by having a great defense, by having great awareness amongst our population, being resilient to Russian disinformation, and reacting quickly once they do something, so we deter from future attacks.
Why is the
What security guarantees will stop Putin from attacking Ukraine in case of any peace deal? And what should be a contribution of both Europe and the US?
Well, with any deal we make with Putin, it's good to trust, but it's much better to verify. So we need a strong Ukraine. We need an independent Ukraine that has a strong armed forces able to defend itself and deter any future attacks, but also solid guarantees from allies, the US, but also European allies.
Concerning the frozen Russian assets in Belgium, is the Netherlands willing to give Belgium some sort of financial backing for these funds to be released?
Well, we're willing. I mean, these funds are really, really important. We need to support the Ukrainian economy. Otherwise, they will have a very tough time next year. These assets are crucial, and we understand the Belgian concerns, and we are willing to at least make sure that they are not alone in this, should this go sour, and should there be any financial consequences. So, yes.
Why is the absence of your Secretary of State not a clear sign that the United States are caring less about European allies?
Well, there's a lot going on in the world at the moment. I mean, we discussed the peace talks in Moscow. We have a peace plan for Gaza that requires a lot of attention in order to move to the next phase. There are tensions in the Caribbean around Venezuela. So I understand that Secretary Rubio at the moment is needed in Washington more than he is needed here at the Foreign Ministers meeting.
That the frozen Russian assets won't be used by the US and Russia like it was deemed in the first 28-point plan?
Well, it's no longer in the plan. So from that perspective, I think that we can move ahead with the European plans that we're now working on using these financial assets against loans, reparation loans, to help Ukraine.
But Prime Minister De Wever is pretty adamant that that's not going to happen. I mean, he's been, in his letter last week, you know, was in no uncertain terms, Belgium is not for this.
Well, his concerns are clear, and the Commission knows what these concerns are. So in the proposals that they will release today, I'm pretty sure that they've taken those concerns into account and that we can move towards a consensus next week or the week after.
Minister, but what makes you so optimistic that the Russians will accept this European plan? Because in the past, the Russians never stepped back from their maximum demands.
Well, the reason they're coming to the table, I believe, is because there is pressure on Russia, because they are struggling with their economy under sanctions pressure. So I think it's in Russia's interest to come to the table, to strike a deal, and to become part of the international community again. That's what we have to offer. But yes, that does require Russia to make concessions, because a Russian dictate will not lead to a lasting peace. Last question. Yes.
How concerned are you that the European Central Bank won't backstop the loan?
Well, this is something we'll have to discuss. I think the Commission will come with their proposal today, and on the basis of that final proposal, we have to come to an agreement by the European Council in December. Thank you.
So, good morning. It is, of course, essential to address Ukraine's financial needs. There should be no mistake. Belgium fully supports this. There is no place for any doubt. But there are different options to do so. We have repeatedly said that we consider the option of the reparations loan the worst of all, as it is risky. It has never been done before. Everyone can see how difficult it has been for months to find a robust solution to the proposed option. This explains why we keep on pleading for an alternative, namely the EU borrowing the amounts needed on the markets. It is a well-known, a robust and a well-established option with predictable parameters. The reparation loans scheme entails consequential economic, financial and legal risks. The letter of my Prime Minister outlined again clearly our concerns. In short, the necessary guarantees for Euroclear, full mutualization of the risks, and go beyond Euroclear and Belgium. These are legitimate and reasonable concerns. Our door has always remained open and still is. However, we have the frustrating feeling of not having been heard. Our concerns are being downplayed. The text the Commission will table today do not address our concerns in a satisfactory manner. It is not acceptable to use the money and leave us alone facing the risks. The proposed reparations loan is clearly not a preferred choice. In the event Member States wish to go in that direction, we demand that the risks Belgium is facing as a result of this scheme are fully covered. This is no unreasonable request. This is simply fairness. Any Member State would ask for the same in our situation. We are not seeking to antagonize our partners or Ukraine. We are simply seeking to avoid potentially disastrous consequences for a Member State that is being asked to show solidarity without being offered the same solidarity in return. I thank you. Yes, we've seen it. It's why it's unsatisfactory.
I will make a statement in Greek and then a brief statement in English. Η Σύνοδος Υπουργών Εξωτερικών του ΝΑΤΟ λαμβάνει χώρα σε μια εξαιρετικά κρίσιμη στιγμή για το μέλλον της συμμαχίας και για την ειρήνη στον κόσμο. Θα πρέπει να διατηρήσουμε την ενότητα της συμμαχίας, τη συνοχή της συμμαχίας, να μετρήσουμε τις δυνάμεις εκείνες που θα μας οδηγήσουν σε πολύ πιο ενισχυμένες αμυντικές δυνατότητες, χωρίς να διαταράξουμε τη συνοχή της άμυνάς μας. Η Υπουργική Σύνοδος λαμβάνει χώρα εν μέσω των συζητήσεων για την Ουκρανία. Θα πρέπει όλοι να καταλάβουμε ότι οφείλουμε να σταθούμε στην Ουκρανία. Η κυριαρχία είναι αδιαπραγμάτευτη, η επιθετικότητα και ο αναθεωρητισμός δεν έχουν καμία θέση στο σύγχρονο κόσμο, δεν έχουν καμία θέση και συνάρτηση με το διεθνές δίκαιο. Ιδιαίτερα θέλω να τονίσω το ζήτημα της νότιας γειτονίας. Η Ελλάδα ήταν από τις χώρες εκείνες οι οποίες πρωτοστάτησαν στο σχέδιο δράσης για την Νότια Συμμαχία. Είμαστε σε μια πολύ ευαίσθητη περιοχή. Η Βόρεια Αφρική, η Μέση Ανατολή, η ζώνη του Σαχέλ αποτελούν εξαιρετικά κρίσιμες περιοχές για την ειρήνη και την ευημερία στην περιοχή. Θα πρέπει να εξαντλήσουμε κάθε δυνατότητα έτσι ώστε να μπορέσουμε να εξασφαλίσουμε την ειρεμία στην περιοχή. Πρέπει όλοι να αντιλαμβανόμαστε ότι σήμερα θέτουμε τα προηγούμενα για το μέλλον. Η Ελλάδα στον σκληρό πυρήνα του ΝΑΤΟ και της Ευρωπαϊκής Ένωσης, στον σκληρό πυρήνα του ΟΑΣΕ, μέλος του Συμβουλίου Ασφαλείας του Οργανισμού Ηνωμένων Εθνών, στέκεται πάντοτε υπέρ της διεθνούς πολυμέρειας, υπέρ του διεθνούς δικαίου, χωρίς εκπτώσεις σε ό,τι αφορά την κυριαρχία και την εδαφική ακεραιότητα των μερών. The Ministerial Summit takes place in a very difficult juncture for the NATO alliance. It's important that we safeguard the cohesion of the alliance, the fair burden sharing, and in view of the negotiation concerning Ukraine, we need to stand by Ukraine. We need to declare that no solution can be without Ukraine, and indeed the importance lies with the fact that revisionism and aggression cannot be rewarded. Special attention should be placed to southern neighborhood, especially Middle East, the region of North Africa and Sahel. They're very critical for the NATO alliance. Greece stands by, Ukraine stands by international multilateralism, by international law. At the heart of the European Union and NATO and members of the Security Council, we will support in every power the right to sovereignty, the right to territorial integrity, the right for a rule-based international legal order. Thank you.
Together, the sizable sum of $500 million. We hope that the United States notices it. We hope that Ukraine notices it. And above all, we hope that other allies see it as encouragement to also take advantage of this program so that Putin gets the message and Ukraine can get a fair peace. Thank you.
We all want peace in Ukraine and we welcome peace efforts, but it has to be a just and durable peace on Ukraine's terms. And to make that a reality, we need to strengthen their capacity to defend themselves today while the war is ongoing, but also potentially after the war when there is a peace agreement. We need a strong and well-armed Ukraine. And for that reason, we're very proud to join in this shared Polish, German, Norwegian initiative on the Pearl package of the accumulated sum of $500 million US, which is for immediate disbursement and which is, as you know, destined to purchase American weapons that will be used by Ukraine and will strengthen their capacity to defend themselves in this very crucial moment, because Europe's security is on the line, Europe's destiny is on the line. This is about Ukraine, but it's also about Europe and the post-war era that will follow the war, and we need to shape that in a good way that matters to Ukraine, it matters to Poland, to Germany, to Norway and all other allies as well.
Ja, meine Damen und Herren, die Bundesregierung ist sehr stolz, dass wir gemeinsam hier mit unseren Freunden in Polen und Norwegen ein großes weiteres Paket packen können, was notwendig ist, um die Ukraine zu unterstützen. 500 Millionen US-Dollar sind eine große Summe. 200 Millionen trägt Deutschland dazu bei. Und wir sehen uns hier vereint in einer schlagkräftigen, handlungsfähigen NATO. Gerade diese beiden Partner zeigen, dass wir gemeinsam entschlossen sind, uns der russischen Aggression tatkräftig entgegenzustellen. In der Tat begrüßen auch wir alle Gespräche, die geführt werden, um diesen Krieg zu beenden. Wir sehen nur zum jetzigen Zeitpunkt überhaupt keinen ernsthaften Willen auf russischer Seite auf einen Verhandlungsmodus einzugehen. Und deswegen muss klar sein, wo wir stehen. Wir stehen fest an der Seite der Ukraine. Wir sind bereit und wir sind in der Lage, die Ukraine dauerhaft zu unterstützen. Das zeigt dieses Paket und das zeigen unsere weiteren Anstrengungen, die wir unternehmen, auch auf europäischer Ebene, um das eingefrorene russische Vermögen nutzbar zu machen. Und diese Einigkeit und diese Schlagkraft, die müssen wir in dieser Zeit deutlich machen, denn nur so kann erreicht werden, das, was wir alle wollen, nämlich ein belastbarer Frieden, eine belastbare Vereinbarung, in der die Interessen der Ukraine gewahrt werden können. Vielen Dank.
Should allies be taking more preemptive action to avoid these kind of hybrid attacks?
We certainly should make ourselves more resilient against Russian hybrid warfare. There have been arsons and assassinations in Germany, in the UK. Russia is escalating. We have a system of exchanging information between our security services. We believe it's also useful to restrict the movement of Russian diplomats in our countries to only the country where they are accredited, or even narrower. We've done that. I've now closed down all of Russia's consulates, which makes it more difficult for them to serve as agents, not only in Poland but in other countries. We need solidarity, and we need to be realistic about Russia's intentions, which are not good.
Eindruck der aktuell laufenden Friedensverhandlungen. Warum haben Sie weiterhin den Eindruck, dass die Amerikaner ausreichend mit den Europäern konsultieren? Und ist die heutige Abwesenheit des US-Außenministers nicht gerade ein Zeichen dafür, dass das nicht mehr der Fall ist?
Wir sprechen uns umfangreich mit der amerikanischen Seite ab. Ich habe ja mit meinem amerikanischen Kollegen Marco Rubio gerade vorgestern Abend noch ein ausführliches Gespräch geführt. Das setzen wir in diesen Tagen fort. Das gilt für alle anderen Kolleginnen und Kollegen auch. Alle wissen, dieses transatlantische Bündnis lebt davon, dass es eine lebendige Verbindung gibt über den Nordatlantik hinaus. Das dient dem Vorteil aller. Das dient der Sicherheit aller, und dieses Bewusstsein, das ist in Washington D.C. genauso vorhanden wie hier in Brüssel und in unseren Hauptstädten. Wir leben diese Gemeinschaft unabhängig davon, wer gerade an diesem Treffen konkret teilnimmt.
Herr Minister, die EU-Kommission will heute den rechtlichen Rahmen vorstellen, wie die russischen Vermögen genutzt werden sollen. Ihr belgischer Kollege war gerade vor Ihnen da und hat noch mal die belgischen Sorgen unterstrichen. Wie wollen Sie den Belgiern ihre Sorgen nehmen, und würde Deutschland die Belgier finanziell oder das ganze Vorhaben finanziell mit absichern? Und wie wichtig wäre es jetzt, dass endlich die Frozen Assets genutzt werden?
Die Bundesregierung arbeitet darauf hin, dass wir im Europäischen Rat einen entsprechenden Beschluss fassen können, dass wir die eingefrorenen russischen Vermögenswerte nutzbar machen können. Das muss auf einer sicheren Rechtsgrundlage geschehen. Daran arbeitet die Kommission und wird die Vorschläge jetzt präsentieren. Wir unterstützen das, und wir nehmen die belgischen Sorgen selbstverständlich ernst. Sie sind berechtigt, aber das Thema ist lösbar. Dann lösbar, wenn wir gemeinsam bereitstehen, Verantwortung zu übernehmen. Deutschland ist dazu bereit und ermutigt alle Mitgliedstaaten, das ebenso zu tun. Ich bin sehr zuversichtlich, dass am Ende der Vorschlag des Bundeskanzlers sich durchsetzen wird.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Так были неинтересно рассказать.
Good morning. Good morning, all of you, and a welcome. Welcome to this meeting of the foreign ministers of NATO. In this session, we will assess the progress made in strengthening our collective defense since NATO leaders met at the historic summit in The Hague. We'll also look ahead at what more allies need to do as we start preparing for the next summit in Ankara in July 2026. And we face real and lasting dangers. Russia continues to test our deterrence. Russia has violated our airspace with jets and drones, conducted sabotage and sent spy ships into our waters. These actions are reckless and they are dangerous. And it's not Russia alone. It is working closely with China, North Korea and Iran to attempt to disrupt our societies and tear up the global rules. They are preparing for long-term confrontation. And we are responding with strength, unity and resolve. European allies and Canada are really stepping up defense investments, and that's good. But we cannot afford to rest on our laurels. We all need to pull our weight and fast. We need to develop and buy core capabilities for our defense and invest in industry, in infrastructure and innovation to stimulate production and boost resilience. We also need to support Ukraine more. Russian missiles keep causing death and destruction, and winter is here. Ukraine needs our support more than ever. We all want the bloodshed to stop, and I strongly welcome President Trump's continued efforts to end this war. Meanwhile, we must accelerate our contributions to Pearl to get urgently needed equipment to Ukraine so that it can defend itself today and prevent aggression in the future. This afternoon, at the working lunch of the NATO-Ukraine Council, Minister Sibia will update us on the latest developments, Ukraine's urgent requirements and the peace effort. And this concludes the public portion of our meeting. I thank the media for joining us.